This pretext conversation will focus on Triad Stage's production of And Then There Were None, adapted from the novel by the same name by one of the greatest mystery writers of all time, Agatha Christie. My name is Lauren Smith, and I'm the Learning Director at Triad Stage. PreText is designed to offer background information and context for this production. It offers you a sneak peek and a leg up. It's not necessarily information you need to enjoy the performance, but rather offers guideposts for your experience as an audience member. Agatha Christie is the third most published author in the world, following William Shakespeare and publications of the Bible. When she was a child, her mother wanted her to wait to learn to read until she was 8 years old, but Christie taught herself to read while listening to others read aloud to her. She published her first work, a poem in the newspaper, when she was 11 years old, followed by a series of short stories that she wrote while recovering from an illness in her teens. Christie is famous for carefully planning out her stories before beginning to write them. She often wrote familiar characters, unassuming maids, aging military men, upright spinsters, and used these recognizable individuals to craft plot twists, as the characters we least suspected often committed the crimes in her mysteries. Christie herself hid in plain sight sometimes. She spent her time, as many women did in the early 20th century, on gardening and decorating, and also went on a number of adventures where she could observe people in places slightly more exciting than everyday life. She was one of the first women to go surfing, and also accompanied her husband on his archaeological digs. In all of these spaces, she used her sharp skills of observation to glean interesting interactions from her life to include in her novels. As you watch the performance, I encourage you to note which characters seem familiar to you, whether from literature or from your own interactions. I'd also encourage you to notice how the set design, particularly use of shadow and light, in combination with a curtain that you'll see when you get into the theater, contribute to a sense of danger and secrecy that the characters experience as the story unfolds. While Christie's mysteries have often been overlooked as popular fiction, she actually was writing in conversation with major pieces of UK and world history. Christie published the novel version of And Then There Were None in 1939, just 2 months after the beginning of World War II in Europe. Many of the characters in Christie's novels, including the one that inspired this play, feature a group of strangers who find themselves thrown together in some kind of dangerous situation. The original audiences who watched this play in the United Kingdom when it premiered may have noticed echoes with what many soldiers who were just entering the war encountered and recounted to their families in letters. This play's ominous sense of foreboding also, in some ways, connects to the impending war and rise of fascism in Europe leading up to World War II. There are 2 endings to the stage version of the play, the more frequently produced ending and the alternate ending that you will see at Triad Stage. I won't spoil anything for you and won't tell you much about the differences, but know that director Preston Lane chose the alternate ending very specifically to explore some of the key themes of the play. The story as a whole asks big questions about concept of guilt and justice. As you're watching the play and talking about it afterward, I encourage you to consider the ways that you define guilt and what is important to you about the way that justice is delivered. Whatever connections you may find, you will be joining audiences across many decades who read or watched one of Christie's greatest triumphs as a mystery writer and a storyteller.